Whether we realize it or not, we're all part of this massive, unspoken experiment. Every single day, decisions are made that shape our lives, our towns, our entire future. So the real question is, who's actually running that experiment? Today, we're diving deep into the battle for control over our collective destiny.
So when you hear the word economics, what's the first thing that pops into your head? Is it spreadsheets, stock market tickers, maybe some super complicated charts on the news? Well, what if I told you it's actually about something much, much more fundamental? You. To really get a grip on who decides our future, we've got to scrap that old textbook definition and see economics for what it really is.
Yeah, forget the whole idea of people as these predictable little cogs in a machine. This way of thinking sees us for who we really are. Complicated, kind of messy, sometimes brilliant human beings. We're driven by a whole mix of things: love, ambition, even fear and loyalty. So from this point of view, economics isn't about perfectly forecasting what we're going to do. It's about understanding the choices we make and how those choices, big and small, ripple out and create the world we all live in. And look, this goes way beyond just picking a brand of cereal at the store. Every time you decide to support a local business instead of a giant chain, or you choose to invest your time in a community project instead of, a side hustle, you are basically casting a vote. You're deciding what you value. And by doing that, you're shaping the future, one little choice at a time. So this brings us to a really interesting group of thinkers who took this idea of individual choice and just ran with it. They're known as the Austrian School of Economics, and their ideas force us to face a pretty uncomfortable question. How much freedom is too much freedom? And who gets to draw that line? Okay, so here's the one thing they all agree on. It's the starting point for a huge debate. Everybody agrees that a society needs some rules to work, right? You can't just have total chaos. But here's the kicker. What is the absolute minimum amount of force or coercion that we need? As we're about to see, the answer to that question can lead to wildly different ideas of what a free society actually looks like. To really get this, let's look at the whole debate through the eyes of four key figures. Now, they all started from that same basic principle you just saw. But wow, did they end up in radically different places. They created this whole spectrum of thought, from a government with a pretty big role to play, all the way to, well, no government at all. First up, we've got Ludwig Lachmann. He looked at the future and saw a terrifying amount of uncertainty. For him, the economy wasn't some well-oiled machine. It was more like a wild, unpredictable beast. He believed that without a steady hand from the government to bring some stability, it could easily just spiral into chaos and take everyone down with it. Next is F.A. Hayek. Now, he was a bit more optimistic about the market, but he had this deep, deep respect for tradition. He saw institutions that had grown over generations, things like social safety nets or public works, as a kind of collective wisdom. His whole argument was that we should be incredibly cautious about just tossing them aside. For Hayek, real freedom wasn't just about what you choose in the moment, but about respecting the choices that came before us. Moving further along, we get to Ludwig von Mises. He argued for what's called a minarchist state, which just means a minimal state. For him, the government had exactly one legitimate job: to be a night watchman. Think of it this way. The night watchman doesn't tell you what to do inside your own house. They just make sure nobody breaks in. And for Mises, that's it. That's the only proper role for government. And finally, at the absolute far end of the spectrum, we have Murray Rothbard. He basically took Mises's logic and pushed it all the way to its ultimate conclusion. He asked, hey, if the market is so great, why stop with the night watchman? Why can't it also provide police, courts, and even national defense? He advocated for anarcho-capitalism, the belief that every necessary social institution could be provided voluntarily, with zero state coercion at all. So there you have it, all laid out, the full spectrum of thought, from Lachmann, who saw a need for government to step in and prevent chaos, all the way over to Rothbard, who believed the state itself was the source of the chaos. The fundamental disagreement here isn't about whether freedom is a good thing. It's about what we need to do, or maybe what we need to stop doing, to actually protect it. Now, I know this might all seem a little abstract, so let's bring it right back down to earth with a very common argument you hear all the time for government intervention: the need for so-called economic growth. But as we're about to see, what growth actually means is way more complicated than you'd think. I mean, what even is wealth? From this point of view, wealth is deeply personal. It's subjective. You can't have a central planner look at a spreadsheet and decide for you whether more cash in your bank account is worth more than more time with your family,
or if a new factory makes a town wealthier than a beautiful, pristine forest. You just can't boil that down to a number. This whole abstract debate became brutally real for the people of New Rochelle, New York. Just imagine this. You wake up one day and find out that the government wants to use its power to seize your home, the place you've lived your whole life, to make way for a giant furniture store. Well, that's exactly what happened, all in the name of growth.
This powerful statement from one of the residents, Dominic Gadaletto, just cuts right to the heart of the matter, doesn't it? He's not just talking about bricks and mortar. He's talking about a life, 67 years, and that is something that you just can't measure in tax revenue. Okay, so at this point, you might be thinking, this all sounds nice in theory, but what about the real world? Doesn't the free market just destroy communities and traditions? And you know what? That's a fair question. So let's tackle some of the biggest criticisms head on. Right, it's really easy to blame the market for the decline of small towns or local shops. But from this perspective, the market is just a mirror reflecting the choices we've all made. If we choose the convenience and low prices of a big box store over the charm of a local shop, well, that's a trade-off we're making. The market doesn't force that choice on us. It just shows us the consequences of our priorities. Okay, another common critique is that our choices aren't really free at all, that we're all just puppets of social pressure. But think about it for a second. Wanting to fit in, to be liked, to not be seen as an outcast, those are powerful human desires, right? Choosing to conform to social norms isn't some failure of the system. It's a sign that we're social creatures. It's still a choice based on what we value, even if what we value is social acceptance. So the next time you hear someone blame the market for some problem, just stop and ask yourself, who exactly is the market? From this point of view, it's not some shadowy monster pulling all the strings. It's us. It's the sum total of all our hopes, our fears, our decisions, and our desires, all playing out in the real world. Blaming the market is like blaming a mirror for what it reflects. And this brings us right back around, full circle, to the question we started with. Who gets to decide what's next? Are we the planners of our own lives, or are we just the planned? This quote from the economist G.L.S. Shackle is, well, it's pretty chilling because it captures the stakes so perfectly. It gives us a stark choice, doesn't it? Are you the protagonist in your own story, or are you just a character in somebody else's? Now, the source argues that this impulse to control, to engage in what's called social engineering, it often comes from a really good place. Planners want to build a better world. But no matter how noble that goal is, it ultimately reduces people to pawns on a chessboard, just pieces to be moved around for the greater good. And in doing so, it denies their basic humanity. So, the next time you hear a debate about economic policy, listen really closely. Because underneath all the jargon in the statistics, they're really only debating one thing. Who gets to write the next chapter of your life? Is it you, or is it someone else? That is the choice that will define everything that comes next.